Then God descended from heaven and said to BCG, "Let there be reviews." Hey guys, the Black Critic Guy, and you're probably wondering, why does this video look different from all the other videos? That's because I'm actually using one of my friend's cameras because this piece of shit keeps going in and out of focus and I don't know what's wrong with it. So I don't want to use it until I can figure out either how to fix it or replace it. So for the meantime, I'll be using this other camera and hopefully things turn out well. But enough of that, let's get to my review of Noah. So Noah is, you guessed it, the story of Noah, who was told by God that a huge flood was coming to eradicate all of mankind, and he is tasked with building an ark to save not only his family, but the creatures that God brought onto this earth so that they can repopulate and build a new world. Now, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't all too excited to see this film. Like, I wasn't like, oh man, I can't wait to see Noah. But I was pretty intrigued to see how it would turn out. I mean, this is Darren Aronofsky's follow-up film to his critically acclaimed Black Swan, which was a pretty good movie, had some great acting in it, and this film has a star-studded cast. I mean, you have Russell Crowe, Ray Winston, Anthony Hopkins, Jennifer Connelly. So I went into this movie with a very, very open mind, and I gotta tell you guys, I was actually very surprised at how much I really enjoyed this movie. Like, I was ready to go to this movie and Bible thump the shit out of it. Like, oh, you're so disrespectful, you're a piece of shit. But actually, I enjoyed many facets of this movie, and they told the story of Noah, especially the parts where they're in the ark, in a very interesting and compelling way. The first thing that really stood out to me is the cinematography and visuals. My God, was it epic in scale. I mean, there's just these shots in the movie that look gorgeous, like beautiful. There's this one scene where you see silhouette of Noah and his wife. Probably one of my favorite scenes, just visual scenes in the entire movie. Yeah, I know I sound pretentious, but honestly, it looked really good. And there were other scenes that were just grand in scale. It looked awesome. And speaking of awesome, there is this one major throwdown in the movie that was so gripping and compelling. It was all sorts of badass, and I won't spoil it for you here, but it was pretty awesome to watch. Now, as for the story, it doesn't really pick up until the flood comes, but once it comes, things start to get really interesting. And there's actually this side story that deals with a pregnancy that I thought was really gripping, intense, and very dramatic. It was a story that I thought was pretty interesting, and honestly, was the best story in the entire movie. Now, for the characters, in the beginning, they weren't all that interesting. In fact, they were very bland and one note. I didn't care about any of them. Again, it wasn't until after the flood happens that they become a little bit more interesting and you kind of feel the dilemma that they're facing. Now, as much as they know that they're not allowed to let the sinners on the boat, they still have a human heart and a conscience. So when they hear people yelling for help and for them to save them, they're conflicted because in their heart, they do want to save them, but they know they're not allowed to. They even ask Noah time and time again, like, come on, we can save at least some of them. We'll throw them a line, we'll do something. But Noah's like, no, God said not to let them on the boat, and that's what we're gonna do. And I really felt that dilemma that they were going through because, again, they are still human. They know what human suffering is like, and they want to help them, but they just can't. I think the one person that was tormented the most by all of this was Noah, because he was a kind person, and he did care about these other people because he related to them and realized that he was no different from the people dying in the flood. But he was so devoted to God that he would blindly serve him no matter what he told him to do. And there's this whole inner conflict between following what God said and following your conscience. And I felt like they tackled on that element very well in this film. And lastly, I thought the acting in the film was solid across the board, especially after the flood comes. You could really feel the human emotion coming out of these performances. Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, and Anthony Hopkins giving the best performances in the entire movie. And there are some exchanges between Jennifer Connelly and Russell Crowe that were very heart-wrenching and emotional. I thought those were the most powerful scenes acting-wise in the film. But as much as I really appreciated a lot of facets in this movie, I did have a couple problems with it as well. Now before I get to some of my cons, I just want to let you guys know that although this movie does follow the story of Noah in Genesis very closely, they do add a lot of elements and a lot of interpretations that you might not agree with, or you just might not like, or wasn't in the Bible at all. You've been warned. The first thing being the Watchers. Now, I haven't read the book of Genesis in a very long time, but I don't remember there being angels helping Noah build his ark. But in this movie, apparently these fallen angels, known as the Watchers, who are basically like these stone giants, help him build the ark, which I found that kind of weird. Now, this isn't a spoiler. They make mention to the Watchers at the beginning of the film, and you see them. But I did find it weird that they were helping Noah build the ark, because I don't really remember that in the story. Nor do I remember Noah's grandfather, who's played by Anthony Hopkins in this movie, being in the book of Genesis at all either. And they give him ridiculous powers. I mean, I was kind of like, wait a minute, is he supposed to be a human, or what is he? They never really explain how he has these magical powers. It's just like, oh, I bestow this upon you and there you go. That part could have been explained a little bit more, and they never explore it. There's also another part in this movie that I won't spoil for you, but I also don't remember that being in Genesis, but it's one of the changes that I actually like because it was very compelling and it did affect the story later on. Like I mentioned earlier, the first half of this movie, the first 40 to 50 minutes, were very boring and uninteresting, and that's attributed to the fact that the story being told, the build-up to the flood, wasn't all that interesting, and the characters in there were very hollow, bland, one-dimensional, and you really didn't care about them. They weren't able to carry the story because there was no development between the characters. There's nothing really interesting about any of them. I mean, Noah's the head of this family, and he has a wife and 2-3 kids, and then they find a girl. They weren't interesting. They didn't develop these characters in the beginning. Now, later on, like I said, they get interesting, but their initial introduction, they're forgettable. In fact, I would almost say that the first half of this movie almost killed it for me. Like, I was so bored and checked out. I was just like, oh, this movie's gonna be like a 2 out of 5. But then the second half came and it got really interesting. I was just like, okay, this is what I came to see. And kind of tying into my point that the first half of this movie was boring, most of the characters weren't that well developed and weren't that layered. The most layered character in this entire movie was the character Ham, played by Logan Lerman. I mean, he was the most layered character and probably the most fascinating character in this entire film, although he doesn't really get a lot of screen time, which was kind of disappointing. But his story was interesting. But as for Emma Watson and her love interest and the other son of Noah, I really didn't care much about them. They weren't all that interesting or compelling. Now, Emma Watson and her love interest will play a huge role later on in the film, but starting off, they were just kind of boring. I really didn't care. I felt no real connection between them. It was just very forced. Like, we need a love story. Here you go, here's a love story. I mean, come on, it's a 2-hour movie. You could have done better in the development with Emma Watson and that boy. We could have cared a little bit more about their relationship. But overall, even though I found the first 40 to 50 minutes of this film rather boring, I still enjoyed a lot of parts of Noah. The visuals were on point. There was one really awesome throwdown that really made the movie for me, and the characters and story got really interesting in the second half once the flood came, and the acting is solid across the board. And that's why I'm going to give this film a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think that it's an enjoyable film, and if you have time, go check it out. But anyway, what did you guys think about this film? Did you like it a lot, or did you find it boring and you really didn't care? And let me know, what is your favorite Darren Aronofsky film? Comment below and let me know. Also, let me know what you think about this new camera. Do you like the way it looks? Do you miss the old one? Do you want me to stick with the old one until I buy a new one on my birthday? Comment and let me know. And also stay tuned. I have a bunch of movie reviews coming your way. I hope to get to Higurashi When They Cry Season 2 this weekend, so I'm going to try to review that soon. And tomorrow, we have a new episode of superheroes and stuff featuring Lacey, so stay tuned for that. And this Monday will be the monthly live chat at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until those videos come, guys, Hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Welcome to the Black Critic Guy. Like this video if you really enjoyed it, and I'm Tony Wiley II, the Black Critic Guy. Till then, peace, YouTube.